Hello and welcome back. This is Penny Sansevieri and Amy Cornell, and this is the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success podcast. I know that Amy is very excited in particular about today's show. This was also a blog post which went up as we're recording this. So by the time the show airs, it'll have been a couple of weeks. But Amy, tell our listeners, first off, welcome to the show. You have a hot button around this topic. Tell us why.
I really do, because we all do. We're a small team. We are all kind of communicating with our clients and authors all the time. But I also usually am the first to communicate with potential clients. And the whole topic around what kind of marketing options and promotional options are available to authors when they have a publisher gets really, really complex and frustrating on both sides. And we've had authors at all stages contact us for what that's worth. You know, some can't even make any marketing decisions for their book. We actually have a woman who contacted us very recently who has been really awesome, has been so grateful for any advice we've been able to give her in regards to going back to her publisher, because she just feels really trapped because she has another book coming out and her first book is just kind of dead in the water right now, but her covers are great. Like, it's one of those situations where I'm sitting here just like fuming that she keeps just getting shut down by her publisher. So we get people that already know that their options are limited, and they come to us asking, like, how can I salvage this? We've got other authors that come to us that are pretty much set on finding a publisher, and they want to talk about marketing, and we have to find a way to kind of just prep them, to not put the cart before the horse, because, you and I both know, Penny, that you can only make so many decisions until you know who your publisher is going to be and what their parameters are and things like that. So that part's also really frustrating, because we get some great book ideas coming to us and then they go, but I want to find a publisher. And then I have to go, well, then we'll have to talk after you decide who that's going to be, sadly, because what we can offer them can change. It can pull an entire 180 depending on who they decide to publish with. And it's kind of freaky.
Well, but the issue is, and I think the reason that we kind of the thought process behind this podcast is that now more than ever, you have so many choices when it comes to publishing, and that's great. But you also have so many choices when it comes to publishing, and that's kind of bad. And I think that, some of them, and it's difficult for authors. I mean, honestly, you and I, we live and breathe this stuff, right? So we look at something and we say, oh my gosh, like, why would a publisher do that? And why would an author agree to that? But a lot of times authors just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And the jargon is confusing and the terms are confusing. And I think that when you are picking a publisher, and we're going to break that down in this podcast, but when you're picking a publisher, you have to remember that you are essentially picking a business partner. It's no different from picking a marketing firm, from picking a book cover person, from picking an editor for your book. You are picking a business partner. And if that business partner is not going to put up roadblocks so that you can't do certain things to market your book, that's a problem. And that means that essentially your book is being held hostage, and it's too bad, because we have authors that put so much effort. I mean, every author puts a lot of effort into their book, some more than others. We all know that story. But, you want to find a publisher. And I understand that when you finish a book, you really just want to turn everything over to somebody else. Believe me, I just finished From Book to Bestseller. Actually, the content edits came back. The line edits are happening. And I'm to the point where I'm just done. I'm just done. And I love the book, don't get me wrong, but I would love nothing more than to just hand it over to somebody else. And I will tell you that I've done that. And sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't. So and even 18 books down the road, I don't know anything about typesetting a book. I know a good cover when I see one, but I don't know the design elements. I don't know how to operate design software. I have no desire to learn. So, you really just want to hand it over to somebody. The issue with that is that you have to, the choices about who you publish with will absolutely impact your book. And as Amy mentioned in her intro, not always for the best. So we know that there are all kinds of different types of publishing. And I want to break publishers down first. We don't necessarily need to talk about the traditional publishers because we know who they are. But I'm mostly concerned about hybrid publishers. And when I say that I'm mostly concerned, I don't want to leave the impression that all hybrid publishers are bad, because they're not. But the issue is the term. So we hear hybrid publishing, and there's no real defined, like, this is exactly what a hybrid publisher is, right? There should be, but there isn't. Mm-hmm. So we've had some authors, and I think, Amy, that was the author that you referenced in your intro, who have a publisher maybe referred to as a hybrid publisher, and I'm doing air quotes right now, that ended up being kind of her worst nightmare.
Yes, exactly. It was one of those things. And I think this happens a lot, where she went into it assuming that a lot was going to be handled and that somebody was going to be looking out for her and that they were going to do all these wonderful things to help promote the book. And the reality is that they helped get her book up on Amazon, and that's where it ended. And she was just kind of stuck at that point because she doesn't have access to her book on the back end of Amazon. They won't run ads. They won't even take any requests from her to make changes to her product page. Like I was losing it reading her email. I was so frustrated at all the issues she was facing. And I was give her credit for it. She's trying to find a workaround. She's trying to do what she can to find something that she can latch on to kind of help herself out. And I don't know if this was an official statistic, but it always seems accurate, Penny, that 99% of any marketing or promotional budget is spent on less than 1% of a publisher's authors.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely accurate. And that's more for the big publishers like Simon & Schuster, because they have, so for example, they have one, like a Dan Brown or a Nicholas Sparks or something like that. They have one main author that can literally keep the entire company afloat for the whole fiscal year, right? So they'll spend their entire marketing budget pushing that author because they know that there's a good ROI there. But for hybrid publishers, it's a little bit different. So hybrid publishers, in theory, right, a good hybrid publisher should give you access to great cover designers and great book interior people. They might have a solid distribution plan. And let me say this about that. Uploading your book to Amazon and other online portals is not a distribution plan, right? A distribution plan is literally getting your book out into the world, maybe libraries, maybe bookstores, maybe, Costco or something like that. They might have separately, they may not have a solid distribution plan, but they might have a large library placement, right? Which is also good for authors. They could have a mailing list, a good mailing list of book buyers. You may get access to their catalog if they produce a catalog. Some hybrid publishers do, which could be popular among book buyers. So those are some of the things that I would absolutely look for if you say, oh, I'm considering this hybrid publisher. They will ask you for some money up front. That's kind of the hybrid part, right? But in exchange, they have all of this cool stuff that they're going to do for you.
Right. And those all sound like, those are great benefits. If you actually end up finding somebody that can confirm that all of these things are really going to happen for you. But I have a feeling that a lot of that's not always super clear at the get-go. Right. And that you might have to ask some of those questions. And part of me too is sitting here with my glasses half empty, next to my computer right now, thinking also that I can't help but think a lot of authors end up in these hybrid models because at the core, they really would love to be published by a big name publisher. And I feel like some of these smaller publishers and hybrid options and things kind of capitalize on the fact that they know that that's what a lot of authors really dream about.
Yes.
And they kind of, they lure them in with the idea that, yes, you can still have some of that. That's what we can do for you. But the reality is what they can really offer you is very different. And I think that gets kind of like lost in the process of feeling like somebody's going to take my book, I'm getting published. You know what I mean? I think a lot of these really important details that are super beneficial and some, hybrid publishers offer them. But I think a lot of that kind of gets ignored in the hustle and bustle of the excitement of finally getting your book out there.
Yes. Yeah. Because, it's great. Look, I self-publish all my books. It would be great to say that I have a traditional publisher. For me, it wouldn't really work for a variety of reasons, only because they usually buy books 18 months out, and I write on topics that get outdated fairly quickly, which is why I update my books every year. But there's also a term called vanity publishing, which sits a little, they both it straddles the hybrid fence a little bit, because vanity publishing, years ago, right, when I was first in business, they would charge authors, and this goes back 20 years, they would charge authors $10,000 to $20,000 to publish their book. Yeah. And I know, it's the craziest thing. And basically, you have a book, and you probably end up getting 500 or so copies. And vanity publishing essentially has kind of gone away. But the problem is that there are companies out there that are, that put on the hybrid publishing hat, but are essentially sort of vanity publishing. So again, I want to be really clear. I'm not a fan of hybrid publishing, but you want to ask good questions. And the other thing too is that when you're done with, and let's use vanity publishing as an example, then all they want to do is sell you marketing services, because the marketing services that are super pricey and just absolutely make me crazy. And let me give you an example, Amy. So a publisher that shall remain nameless, this is probably before your time. So this was over 10 years ago. Do you remember fax machines, right? Let's just take our DeLorean and go back in time. So this author had spent, I don't know, I guess it was $2,500 or something on a fax blast. Okay.
Oh God.
A fax blast. So basically the company, they wrote a very poorly written press release, and they would fax it to publications all over the country. Right. So a freelance writer that I knew at the time, who was at Car and Driver, which is so crazy, got a press release on this romance book.
Oh.
And he sent me an email, and he's just like, wow, thanks for vetting your list. Right. So, but again, taking advantage of an author's lack of knowledge, which when you're starting out, you don't know what you don't know, is despicable. So, there's nothing wrong with buying marketing services from these companies. Just make sure that you're buying something that is really, worth it. The other form of hybrid publishing, which just makes me crazy, there are publishers that sort of show up as arms of big publishing houses, right? So we know the big Penguin and Simon and Schuster, et cetera. It's big publishers in New York. They get a whole flood of books that they can't publish, right? So in theory, having a publishing arm that's dedicated to independently publishing or offering authors a solution to independently publish books that they can't take sounds like a really good idea, right? In theory. But the challenge is that there isn't enough information. And I will be really candid with you. I haven't gone through all their marketing materials, so I don't know whether this is accidental or intentional. Or, maybe authors aren't asking the right questions or something. But a lot of authors that I've ever talked to assume that because the arm of XYZ major publishing house is publishing them, that that's actually their publisher, right? And so it just gets,
I'm so glad we're not on video right now because I'm making so many ugly, nasty faces.
I know it.
But it is maddening. And that kind of goes back, I think, to what, I was asking you about, kind of these assumptions and these goals that are very fair for a lot of authors to have about having a big name behind their book.
Yeah.
And kind of falling into a trap of kind of staying tunnel vision on just that part of it.
Right.
And forgetting to ask, like you've been saying, Penny, asking the right questions about what you're really getting out of that contract you're signing and what it does for you, not just to get the book out, but what it means for your book going forward.
Yeah.
What happens to your book a year from now? What happens, like, how does that change? Does it change? I think that's something else too, that we see a lot with a lot of authors that'll come to us with their first book that was traditionally published. And then they've made the decision to self-publish their second book in the series because they just wanted more options.
Yeah.
And it really is frustrating because, there's very little that we can do for that first book. And at that point, the author kind of doesn't want to do much for it either, because they're like, well, sadly, like, we are estranged. It's like an estranged family that no longer speaks anymore.
Right.
They're like,
right.
We don't talk to that aunt anymore because, we can't have anything to do with her.
Right.
But it's a really sad situation to be in. And I will say that, on our end of it, it frustrates us. And we see it, from a different perspective, because by the time authors are reaching out to us, they have all this bottled up, kind of resentment and frustration and anger. And, we try our best to walk them through it. But most of the time, I think they just feel like they have no options with their publisher anymore either.
Yeah.
And that makes it a tough conversation as well. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I can't do anything about it. And then they look to us for solutions, and we try to help the best that we can. But there's really not too much you can do once you've gone down that road. And I think that's why it's so important that we're addressing this finally.
Yeah.
Because, once you hop on that train, there's not a lot of stops.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, that's absolutely true. And, then we have companies like Ingram Spark, who we've worked with quite a bit, and BookBaby. And there are a bunch of other ones. I'm not excluding them because I don't like them, but there are a bunch of other ones. But those companies are really facilitators, right? And what I love about these types of companies is they know their place. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that they don't try to masquerade as something that they're not. They are they're on demand. They help you to get your book up on, the various portals. So Amazon and you could put Smashwords and Drafted Digital and whatnot kind of in that, sort of in that bucket too. They help you to get onto these various portals. And authors I've published with, KDP mostly, just because for a variety of reasons that we'll talk about in this call too, in this podcast rather.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That I do appreciate when companies like, this is what we do. We don't go there with the marketing stuff. And even in those situations, Penny, I'm glad that we're able to help authors understand the right questions to ask, even in those situations when it comes to their marketing, because for the most part, these facilitator companies, like you said, they don't necessarily feel it's their role to then educate authors on, now here's what you have to do to get this book out there. Like that is not the place. And so they are not going to put that right in front of your face as an author. So you really have to own figuring out what the next steps are to get your book out there, whether that's hiring, whether it's asking, your rep at Ingram Spark, like, I need access to this, or I need instructions on how to do that. Like they are not going to spoon feed that to you as well. So you really, again, this all circles back to taking some ownership over the success and the longevity of your book. And so should we talk about more kind of do's and don'ts?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Can I take the first one?
Yes, please.
So when you're interviewing a publisher, so let's stay kind of in the hybrid publisher bucket, right? So when you're interviewing a publisher, take a look at their prior books. So this one always kind of, I want to say cracks me up, but that's not really in a good way. Like it's not really funny. So I talked to an author, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and she has this fabulous book idea. She has a friend who has never been a publisher, but wants to become a publisher to help her publish her book. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know what the contractual relationship is between the two, but I will tell you that me personally, I would not want somebody to learn about publishing on my watch, right? Because it can be a steep learning curve. So make sure that the publisher that you're going with has take a look at their prior books. Take a look and see what they've done previously. Take a look at the covers. Compare the covers to similar genre. If you have no idea, like if you're just starting out, like, I don't even know what a cover should look like, which is fully understandable. Take a look at Amazon and see in similar genres if you feel like these covers could match up. The other thing that you could do too is that taking a look at some of the authors listed on their website and start to Google them and find their websites and shoot them over an email. I find most authors, if not all authors, are really receptive to giving feedback. So reach out to them directly and ask them, say, so far, so good. I'm liking the books on the website. Even before you get into the contract with the publisher, what's your experience been? And they will probably be more than willing to tell you.
Yes. Really smart.
Yeah. And let's talk specifically now about book cover design, because I know you have very strong, we all have very strong feelings on book cover design.
Yes. The book cover design. I think, your point to checking in on the books too, Penny, that goes to checking out how they're presented on Amazon as well. Because if the company that you're looking into, the publisher you're looking into, says they handle all of that, then you definitely want to look at the book as a product. So if you're seeing that they're all kind of set up the same way, that should set off a little alarm bell that the authors may not have a lot of say or access to their product page. And that's something that you want to discuss with them. Sorry, that's another thing that we deal with a lot too, is just how the book is presented as a product. So if you're seeing a lot of similarities across the board for a particular publisher's books on Amazon, then you need to ask smart questions about how much control or say you have in the final product and how it's presented to buyers, potential buyers. But the book cover design, that's a tricky one, because I will say, and again, we're not going to use any names, but sometimes Penny and I are shocked when we see a cover and then we find out that the book actually came from a publisher.
Yeah.
It's like, what is happening here? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I almost don't even have the words for the feelings that come across when we see a book that, you're like, there's no way that came out of a professional publisher, but it happens. Right. And that's another area that you want to ask, like, how much say do you have in the book cover design? Because not only are they just sometimes not good, but sometimes they're not for the right market. So this also comes back to taking ownership over your book, doing your homework, doing your due diligence, because we've seen this before too, Penny, where a publisher was like, this is the market the book is in. And then by the time we end up chatting with the author, we're like, oh, that's not exactly right. That is not going to be your best potential sales market. But then once your cover's designed with that in mind, it gets really hard to kind of break out of that first impression that you're giving with your cover if you're trying to connect with an entirely separate market than it was designed for. So that's something else that you have to be really careful about. And I would say at the end of the day, just pushing to have some sort of say in your final cover design. And then, if you know nothing at the time you're signing your contract, but they say, yes, you can have some input, we can do some revisions, then that's when you need to buck up and do a little homework and figure out, what's working in your market, or, maybe collaborate with a marketing professional on a coaching basis or something like that and get some ideas of what you need to be chatting with your publisher about in regards to getting that cover made.
Well, and the other thing that I would suggest too is get the revisions in writing, right? So find out how many revisions that you can have to the cover, and make sure that that's in the contract in writing or in an email from the publishing house. The other thing to consider too with cover design, which a lot of companies, I think most, even BookBaby and Ingram Spark, and they all offer cover design. There are different kinds of cover designers, right? So I've worked with designers who basically, and they're very inexpensive, right? They basically say, you tell me what you want and I'll design it, right? And that's perfect for the author who spot on knows their market, knows the kind of look they want, et cetera. But that's not most of us. So the majority, and I have 18 books, Amy. I'm like, here you go. Here are my ideas. Here's what the book's about. Design something, because I can get kind of a look, but I have no design talent whatsoever. So you want to make sure that you have those revisions, because you may be paired with a designer who is a designer, yes, but doesn't necessarily design. They'll design based on your feedback. And that gets to be a problem.
That gets very tricky. Yeah, no, I agree, because it's also, we say it a lot, Penny, that you have to be really careful about getting too close to your own work as well. So that can be a very slippery slope when you're partnered with somebody who is there to be a yes person. Mm-hmm. And just do what you ask, because like you said, unless you are spot on 100% sure, what your market is and what makes them tick and what makes them click buy. If there's any hesitation that you're not fully on top of all that, you could just, it can get very confusing working with somebody that's just going to do what you ask them to do.
Absolutely. And I would also say to that end that, you want to find out, sometimes it happens. In fact, I talked to an author yesterday and he said, the publishing company had a designer. They did a couple of designs. I wasn't happy. So he said, I just decided to, eat the cover design money that I paid them and hire my own person, because I realize, he said, I realize how important the cover is. That's obviously an extreme case, but I would say that, be willing to say, this isn't working. And I had the situation, because I'm trying to design the book to bestseller cover with a designer who had a great portfolio. And because I was sending you the designs, Amy, and she finally said, she goes, you know what? I don't think that I really understand your market. I don't think that I'm the right designer for you. And I really respected that. I think that, so we parted ways, and I'll find somebody else to do the cover for it. But you have to be willing to kind of make that call. So book pricing, this is all such great therapy. Book pricing. Amy and I both have very strong feelings about book pricing. I talked to an author a couple of weeks ago, and she has a fabulous book. The publisher told her, and I'm just taking a pause here so that I don't scream in everybody's ear.
I'm giving myself wrinkles.
I know. The publisher told her that her print book price was worth $50, and so she should price her book at $50. Yeah. I believe that my books are also worth $50 and even $200, but I'm sure as heck not going to price them that. Right. I remember I told you that I sent you an email and I said, this person is so lovely. And I had no words when she said that to me on the phone, because at this point, she can't change the pricing on her book, which we're also going to talk about. There's nothing you can do.
No. And we have a lot of, not to get off on something totally unrelated, but we do have this book price conversation.
That would be so unlike us, right?
I know. I don't know. And, I was also thinking, everybody listening is probably going, do they have, not strong feelings about anything? It's like, no, pretty much not. There's only lots of strong feelings right now.
Right.
But I will say again, not to get off on a totally different tangent, but the pricing thing is very real. And we have this conversation with authors a lot, because I do think they get, depending on who they're talking to, they do get feedback like this, like, your book is worth more. Some people are paying this much for books in your market. And it's like, ooh, that is a very dangerous game to play. And at the end of the day, the reality is it's not as much about the pricing for buyers as it is for the time they invest in your book.
Oh, absolutely.
And again, I just want people to remember that, just in general, because that really, whether we're talking about publishers or something entirely different, doing a show on Amazon, the pricing thing, it's less about the money that makes people buy. Obviously, if your book is $50 and everybody else's book in the market is down at like $19.99, then that's a major red flag. But the pricing is less critical than what you're asking people to do for you, which is spend hours with your content. Hours. Even if you've written a short book, you are asking for multiple hours of somebody's life dedicated to something that you have produced. That is not a small ask.
Yeah.
So this pricing thing, I think authors get really hung up on the pricing, but also keep in mind, you're asking for much more than just, a set amount of money. It's a big ask. So anyway, sorry, I just had to say that because we get it. We get so focused on pricing, and pricing definitely matters, but you also have to remember the time you're asking people to invest. And I think that plays into why you can't overprice your book, because you're already asking for a lot of their time. Yes. So then you're also going to insist that they pay an astronomical premium for your book as well. On top of that, it starts getting kind of ludicrous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Sorry, rant over, but
no, but I would say that, make sure that it's in the contract that you get to set your book pricing, or you have a say in your book pricing or something like that. When you're publishing with, like Ingram Spark or BookBaby or Amazon Publishing or whatever, they will usually give you guidelines for, here's what we, in particular for a print book, because they know the cost to print it, right? So they'll give you guidelines. But if that's not the case with the publisher that you're going to be working with, get it in writing. And I will say that for everything that we're talking about today, get it in writing, whether it's in the contract or in an email. Absolutely. Because otherwise, I'm telling you, if you have a phone conversation and it's all hearts and flowers, and you come back to this, you say, but you said on the phone, suddenly everybody's got amnesia. So it's that absolutely. It's absolutely true. Amy, do you want to talk about because I know we've had some issues with authors being able to get electronic versions of their book. It's so crazy.
Oh yeah, this is another tough one for me. And again, it's all about me, because the things that I bring up are things that the things that I bring up tend to be specific strategies in our campaigns that I play a role in. So these kind of things are right in front of my face all the time, and I'm dealing with walking authors through what their options are and the pushback and things like this. And I realize for the individual authors, this is their first time dealing with it, but I hope y'all understand our frustration is because it's like Groundhog Day for us. So for us to see multiple authors over and over again have the same struggles is for something, against something that we love doing and that we're really passionate about. It really is so frustrating beyond anything that we could actually put into words. So that's where a lot of this comes from. But yeah, access, getting electronic versions of your book, those are really important for reviewers a lot of times. And specifically early reviews, book blurbs, things like that. I will say, Penny, we have had an increase in authors coming to us that are really interested in getting early reviews and getting blurbs for their book in advance of the publication date. And in a lot of ways, I appreciate when we see upticks and things like this, because to me, it shows that that authors are educating themselves on things that can help, boost your book once it's out there, and all these details that not every author was thinking about for a long time are slowly starting to crop up more and more. And I love that. I love that authors are becoming more educated as a whole. But if you don't get access to an electronic version of your book, it's, your chances of being able to do any sort of early promotion on your own, really, they just get squashed. There will be no sending out early versions for blurbs. There'll be no sending out early ARC versions for getting readers to read your book so they can post a review right after it releases. Those are also these are the kind of things that we know work really well for boosting a book's ranking and your status on Amazon and things like that. Those reviews that start populating right after the book releases, things like that. And you just can't make that happen if you can't get books to readers in advance. And the easiest way to do that is with electronic copies. So that's another thing to talk to your publisher about. Am I going to have access to any early ARCs? That's advanced reader copies, advanced review copies of my book. Are you going to make those available to me? What formats do you have available? Things like that. Because if you do end up working with a marketing person, or you do end up thinking I'm going to try to push, start working on my book before it's released. If you don't have those files, it greatly limits your ability to do any early promotion.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good point. And I think that the next piece of this, access to your book, I cannot emphasize how important it is to be able to have access to and by access to your book, what I mean is that when you publish with, and this actually goes for any of the indie publishers that I referenced earlier, so this isn't just a hybrid issue, but when you publish with a publisher, you're essentially publishing your book under their account, which is understandable, right? But the ebook is also published under their account. And without access to your ebook, direct access to your ebook, you cannot do optimization. You are going to have a hard time changing your book description on Amazon or making tweaks to that. You're not going to be able to do Amazon ads at all, right? And a way around that is if you upload your ebook directly to the KDP Amazon portal. And you can have, so we had one author who published with Ingram Spark, and essentially what they did is they let Ingram Spark publish it everywhere else. And I think we just had somebody who did this with BookBaby too, but they held on to the file for Amazon so that they could upload it to the Amazon portal. Without that access, you're also severely limited in what you can do. So one of the other pieces for the contract, or something to ask that you want to get in writing, is, can I publish on my own to the Amazon portal using the Mobi file which is the file format that Amazon reads, that they ideally will create for you. Having access to your book is extremely important. Amy and I have just had a situation with a publisher actually this week who didn't want to give the author access to their Amazon ads dashboard. So we were trying to run their Amazon ads, and it's just, it just makes your life so much more difficult.
It really does. And again, going back to, it's tough because it's hard because we lay out all these great options in regards to marketing based on what technically is available to you as an author. Yeah. But then you start chipping away at those options depending on your publisher restrictions. And so it's really hard for us when we get to that point, because we are chomping at the bit, ready to go, ready to market this book, get it out there. And then we get shut down on the ads. And, the authors aren't happy. We're not happy. Nobody's happy, essentially.
Yeah.
everybody ends up having a bad day over it. And it makes your road to, that path you're taking, to authorship and becoming a successful author. It really throws some crazy curveballs your way. And, as you've been saying this whole time, Penny, asking smart questions, doing that planning in advance, and just really taking your publisher to task for confirming a lot of these things that you really have every right to, is really important and can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And Penny, there's a lot of issues we see as well with our clients not having an easy way to get copies of their books too.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Which just blows my mind. Like, I just, again, all these things kind of drive me insane, but the list of things that our authors have struggles with when it comes to dealing with their publisher just leaves me almost speechless. Not quite, because obviously we have a podcast. So
but I think the final point on this is that, your author copies. So I would as well get it in writing. Do you have to buy a bunch of your own books? Because we had an author, I think it was last year, and she said, yeah, I guess I didn't read my contract well enough. And she was required to buy 1,000 copies of her own book. Right. And
at retail?
No, it was still at her, her discount pricing. But that's the other piece of it too, is you want to find out but still 1,000 copies. Like, I don't know where I'd put 1,000 copies of my own book. Right. I mean, I'd have to
you could build a wing onto your house.
Oh my gosh. I know. But the other thing is what there's not a publisher in the world that's going to say, no, you can't buy your own author copies. The issue is you want to find out what kind of a discount that you're going to get. All right. So the standard discount should be 50%. I mean, I think some may say 40%, but you want to get it steep enough. If you buy, like over 100 copies or something, sometimes the price, the cost of the cost of the books will go down, right, when you start to buy more copies. But you want to just make sure to get that in writing, and also find out, like, if you're doing, so we have authors that do speaker when in-person speaking events start to come back. And if you need 500 copies for an event that you're doing, are you going to be able to get some bulk pricing? So that's another thing that you just want to ask about. I think that, and I think just to kind of close this out, I mean, I know we went a little bit longer than we normally do. It's such an important topic to make sure that whoever you are aligning yourself with to get your book out into the world really has your best interest at heart. And I think, most of them do, but as we know, the small percentage of bad apples are the ones that kind of taint us and make us, give us all kinds of reasons for discussion. And Amy and I, particular hot buttons. The majority of publishers do great work for authors, and they really want, they want to take on good books, because if you look good, they look good also, right? And they want to take on great projects. Just get it in writing, ask smart questions, and we'd love your feedback on the show. If you have, if this is something that helped you to make a better decision about a publisher, or if you have a publishing story that you want to share with us, our contact details are always in the show notes. We appreciate your reviews. We love to get reviews. So please remember to review the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. This is Penny Sansevieri and my awesome co-host, Amy Cornell. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.